True crime cases. So disturbing. You won't believe they're real. You think you've heard it all. You know the big names, the killers who are household words. But there are other stories. The ones that get buried, the cases that are so bizarre, so twisted, they don't seem real. These are the stories that crawl under your skin because the facts are stranger than any horror movie you've ever seen. Tonight, we're not talking about the usual suspects. We're digging into the cases from the footnotes of criminal history, the ones that are waiting in the dark to be told. So what if the only witness who could solve a murder was the victim herself? Sounds impossible. Something out of a late-night movie. But for one police department, that's exactly what they were faced with. In the stories we're about to explore, the line between what's real and what's not gets blurry, and the truth is a whole lot more disturbing than you can imagine. Teresita Basa was a good person, the kind of person you'd want as a neighbor. She was born in the Philippines, came to the US in the 1960s, and settled in Chicago. She worked as a respiratory therapist, loved the piano, and was known for being kind and quiet. A good soul, by all accounts. Then, on the night of February 21st, 1977, her quiet life came to a violent end. Teresita had told a friend on the phone she was expecting company. An hour later, her apartment was on fire. After the firefighters put out the blaze, they found her. Underneath a burnt mattress, Teresita Basa was dead, a kitchen knife plunged into her chest. For the Chicago police, the investigation was a headache from the start. The scene looked like a sexual assault, but the medical examiner said no, that was faked. A deliberate misdirection. The apartment was torn apart, but with no clear idea of what she owned, they couldn't even be sure if robbery was the motive. No forced entry, no weapon besides her own knife, and no suspects. For 6 long months, the case went nowhere. It was cold. It seemed Teresita's killer was going to get away with it. And then, things got weird. Really weird. Across town, a doctor named Jose Chua started noticing something strange happening to his wife, Remy. Like Teresita, Remy worked at Edgewater Hospital. At night, she'd fall into these trances, and when she spoke, it wasn't her voice. One night, the voice coming out of Remy's mouth was chillingly clear. It said it was Teresita Basa, and it wanted justice. Dr. Chua, well, he was terrified. He didn't even know Teresita, not really. He figured it was just stress, maybe nightmares. But it kept happening. The voice, speaking through his wife, started giving details. Details only the police and the killer could possibly know. It gave them a name, Alan Showery, another orderly from the hospital. The voice of Teresita said Showery came over to fix her TV, but instead he attacked her, killed her, and stole her jewelry. It even described the jewelry and said he'd given it to his girlfriend. Now you're a detective. Someone walks into your office and tells you a ghost is solving your murder case. You're skeptical, to say the least. But the detectives on the case, Joseph Stakula and Lee Eplin, heard the story out. The details were just too specific to ignore. So they did their job. They looked into Alan Showery, and they found him, working right there at the hospital. They also found a record that Teresita had, in fact, told people a man named Alan was coming to help with her television. So the detectives paid a visit to Showery's girlfriend. And there it was. Around her neck and on her finger were the pearl ring and jade pendant the voice had described. Teresita's family confirmed it. The jewelry was hers. When asked where she got it, the girlfriend said Alan had given it to her as a late Christmas gift, in February, the same month as the murder. Faced with that, Alan Showery's story fell apart. He confessed to everything. He went there to rob her, took the jewelry, killed her, and then set the fire to cover his tracks. The trial was a media circus, nicknamed the Voice from the Grave case. At first, Showery took back his confession, and his trial ended in a hung jury. Jurors just couldn't wrap their heads around the source of the evidence. But right before the second trial was about to start, Alan Showery pleaded guilty to murder and robbery. The arson charge was dropped. He was sentenced to 14 years and was paroled in 1983, disappearing afterward. To this day, the Teresita Basa case is one of the strangest in American history. A murder solved, apparently, by the one person who shouldn't have been able to talk. But sometimes, the horror isn't a voice from beyond. Sometimes, it's meticulously built, piece by piece, by a monster who builds his own hell on Earth. Our next case takes us to the New Mexico desert, and to a place known only as the Toy Box. Some monsters look just like everyone else. David Parker. Ray lived in a small town in New Mexico called Elephant Butte. He was a maintenance man, lived in a trailer, nothing to see here. But inside that property was another trailer, a soundproofed cargo container he called his toy box. And what he did in there? It's pure evil. Ray wasn't interested in a quick kill. His goal was torture. He and his girlfriend Cindy Hendy would snatch women from parking lots, sometimes with Ray pretending to be a cop. Once inside his trailer, the real nightmare started. The toy box was kitted out with whips, chains, surgical tools, and an electric shock machine. It was a torture chamber. But the worst part? A tape recording. When his victims woke up, chained and terrified, he'd play them a tape. It was his own voice, calm and detached, explaining every horrible thing he was about to do to them. He told them nobody could hear them, that they belonged to him, and that escape was impossible. He even said the neighbors were in on it. For years, David Parker Ray got away with it. It's believed he tortured and raped as many as 60 women. No bodies were ever found, so he was never convicted of murder. After weeks or months, he'd drug his victims to wipe their memories and then dump them on the side of the road. They'd wake up with no idea what had just happened to them, leaving the police with nothing but fragments and dead ends. That all stopped on March 22nd, 1999. 3 days earlier, Ray had abducted a 22-year-old woman named Cynthia Vigil. She was put through the same hell as the others, chained, abused, forced to listen to that voice on the tape. But Cynthia was a survivor. She was not going to be another one of his forgotten victims. Her chance came when Ray left for work, leaving his girlfriend Hendy to guard her. In a moment of pure courage, Cynthia got a hand free. She and Hendy fought. Cynthia grabbed an ice pick, stabbed Hendy, and she ran, naked. With nothing but a padlocked dog collar still locked around her neck, she fled. Remembering the tape's warning about the neighbors, she ran right past the first house and flagged down another for help. The owner saw her, brought her inside, and called 911. Cynthia Vigil's escape blew the case wide open. Her testimony led police right to David Parker Ray's front door. When they searched the property, they found it. The toy box. Just like she said, filled with tools of torture and Ray's own detailed diaries. The whole thing unraveled. Another survivor came forward. Ray's accomplice, Cindy Hendy, started talking to save herself, implicating others, including Ray's daughter. In 2001, to get his daughter a more lenient sentence, David Parker Ray took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 224 years for kidnapping and torture. He never stood trial for murder, and he never said where any bodies might be buried. A little over a year later, in 2002, he died of a heart attack in prison, taking his secrets with him. Cynthia Vigil's bravery didn't just save herself. It shut down one of the most sadistic torturers America has ever seen. A monster in the desert is one thing. But what if the threat is already inside your house, silent and unseen, just waiting to strike? Our final story takes us to a remote German farm, where a family's last days were spent with a horror they couldn't see, but they could feel. In the quiet farmland of Bavaria, Germany, there was an isolated farmstead called Hinterkaifeck. The name itself basically means behind the middle of nowhere. And in March of 1922, it was home to the Gruber family, Andreas and Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, and her 2 young children, Kazilia and Joseph. They mostly kept to themselves. In the weeks leading up to their deaths, strange things started happening. Unsettling things. The father, Andreas, told a neighbor he'd found footprints in the snow. They led from the woods straight to the farmhouse, but there were no tracks leading away. He heard footsteps in the attic right above their heads while they slept, but when he looked, he found no one. A newspaper from Munich that nobody had bought just appeared on the property. Then the house keys vanished. The family's last maid had quit 6 months before, swearing the place was haunted. It all came to a head on Friday, March 31st. A new maid, Maria Baumgartner, arrived that afternoon for her very first day. The sister who walked her to the farm was the last person to see anyone there alive. That night, someone, or someones, ended the lives of the entire Gruber family and their new maid. Nobody noticed for 4 days. The little girl missed school. The family missed church. Finally, on April 4th, some neighbors went to investigate. The farm was quiet, too quiet. They couldn't get in the front door, so they went to the barn, and what they found inside would stay with them forever. Piled in the hay were the bodies of Andreas, his wife, their daughter Victoria, and their 7-year-old granddaughter Cecilia. They'd all been bludgeoned to death with a mattock, a pickaxe from the farm itself. It looked like they'd been lured into the barn, one by one. Inside the house, the horror was waiting in the bedrooms. The new maid, Maria, and the 2-year-old boy, Josef, were dead too, killed with the same weapon. But here's the part that will keep you up at night. The killer didn't run. They stayed. For 3 days after the murders, with 6 bodies lying in the barn and the house, someone remained at Hinterkaifeck. They fed the cattle. They ate meals in the kitchen. They kept the fire going. This phantom lived among their victims for days before finally disappearing without a trace. The investigation was massive, but a mess. Over 100 people were interviewed over the years, but no one was ever charged. Theories ran from a botched robbery, even though a pile of cash was left untouched, to a crime of passion. Suspicion even fell on Victoria's husband, Karl, who was supposedly killed in World War I, though it's debated whether his death was ever truly confirmed. In 1923, they tore the farmstead down, as if to erase the memory. The case remains one of Germany's darkest, most chilling, unsolved mysteries. The skulls of the victims were taken for analysis and then lost in World War II, so the family was buried without their heads. We still don't know who was walking in their attic, who made those tracks in the snow, and who lived in their home after slaughtering them all. A voice from the grave, pointing a finger at a killer. A custom-built torture chamber hidden in a desert trailer. A phantom who moves in with a family before and after he murders them. The stories you've heard tonight aren't just about violence. They're about the bizarre, the unbelievable, and the deeply unsettling truth that the darkest parts of human nature are found where you least expect them. The truth really is more terrifying than fiction. Which one of these cases will you be unable to forget? If you found these stories as unsettling as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into the strange and mysterious corners of history. Let us know what you think in the comments. We have a lot more stories to tell. Thanks for stopping by.